Thanks and welcome to the Pioneer Made to Grow podcast. Today, live from Saskatoon and just east of town at the Corteva Agriscience Research Farm, we have two very special guests. We've got Jeremy Dirks, who is the new leader of Corteva Canada, and April Nichol is the fairly new as well, seed marketing leader for Corteva Canada. April, Jeremy, thanks for joining the podcast.
Thanks, Andrew. Happy to be here.
Thanks, Andrew. Happy to be here as well.
So first of all, maybe I'll start with you, Jeremy. Your background is from the U.S. You've come to lead the Corteva Canada team, taking over for Bryce earlier this year. Maybe start with just a little bit about yourself. How have you come up through the ranks of Corteva?
Yeah, so I started with Corteva in 2001. So a little over 20 years. Most all of that's been in the commercial organization. Done a lot of the field roles that a lot of our territory folks would do today in seed and crop protection. 2018 moved to Johnston and at our global headquarters and led our Western Corn Belt as a commercial leader there. And then 2020, I jumped over to the business platform, led our global canola portfolio as well as sunflower, led some of our food system and consumer strategy work. And then right before this role, I led our project management office. And then in January, took the role for the commercial lead for Canada.
So kind of having come up through those ranks, what do you think of the Canadian market now that you've been here a few months?
It's impressive. It's obviously a big country, and I've spent the first 6 months just traveling across it, meeting our teams, meeting our employees, meeting as many customers, retailers as I can, just understanding the challenges, understanding what potential solutions that we have to offer. But that's how I've devoted the last 6 months, is just trying to learn the business, learn the people, and learn about Canada.
Speaking of those people, April is one of those people that's no stranger to particularly the Western Canadian market. Talk a little bit about your background in Corteva, April.
Yeah, sure. Thanks, Andrew. So I've been with Corteva and legacy business for about 10 years, but I have spent the last 20 years in the ag industry, specifically in Western Canada and more specifically in Saskatchewan. And so I came to Corteva as a pioneer TM in southern Saskatchewan and had the pleasure of building the rep channel in that marketplace. And then most recently, I was a district leader for southern Saskatchewan, managing our integrated channel, and then had the opportunity to kind of step up and lead the Canadian seed business. So it's been great, learning the Western Canadian business from a different angle, but also starting to learn the Eastern business as well. And then for fun, my husband and I farm east of Regina near Coppell. And so agriculture is obviously near and dear to my heart, and canola is an important part of that business as well.
Sounds like you have a lot of time for fun on top of the job to be farming. But, and this is the way, just with your experiences, this is the way we're kind of going to look at this episode is you obviously have a lot of background in the Western Canadian market. You coming out of the Midwest have a lot of experience with a very similar market to what we have in Eastern Canada. So if we can kind of split the country in two because they are such different markets, maybe we'll pick up on the Western Canadian market and just to, talk about in terms of, over those last number of years that you were building teams and, working across Western Canada. What have you seen from growers, and what's changed from growers in terms of what they're expecting from when they're picking seed varieties, hybrids, chemical products, whatever it is?
Mm-hmm. That's a good question. So I think the thing that hasn't changed probably is growers want the best yield possible, right? So that always generates their decision-making process. But what has changed is just the options and the trait packages and the sheer choice that they have in the marketplace when they're looking at their seed choices. They probably had one or two choices 10 or even 15 years ago for sure. It was canola or canola. There wasn't a herbicide system. Now there's 3 different herbicide systems. As we've evolved, there's within those, then there's been added traits in terms of disease packages. So we can talk about clubroot or sclerotinia. And then more recently, the whole harvest flexibility has really generated, how they're making decisions. And so that's been a pretty unique evolution. And it really has shown the R&D pipeline in Western Canada and what's possible to provide growers unique solutions that they probably didn't even know they wanted at the time.
That actually sounds pretty familiar to, kind of that Eastern Canadian market, particularly, in the corn and soybean market. When we look at the last number of years, what do you see as growers, and what they're not only offered, but what they're expecting from their products that they're purchasing over the last number of years?
I think number one is still profitability. I mean, I think that drives their decisions. There's a lot of choices out there, but what we want to continue to bring is a choice that brings in profitability, stability, quality, things like that I see come through growers, ideas, mouths often, and we want a consistent experience for them that they know that they can rely on. I think about all the challenges that they're facing, whether they're the East or the West, and I think profitability continues to drive their decisions.
Now, you talk about those challenges, having done a whole bunch of episodes over the last number of years looking at some of those challenges that growers do experience. Whenever I talk to researchers, wherever they are in, North America for the Corteva team, I'm always amazed at their foresight in terms of, what those challenges are. Can you talk a little bit about, when you look ahead, particularly in corn and soybeans, what do you see as some of the challenges that you've got to be ready for in the next 5 or 10 years?
Well, I think it's just always changing. Well, you're right. I mean, our R&D teams are spectacular in what they do. I mean, we're sitting in Saskatoon today. This is one site. But it doesn't stop there. I mean, when you think about the amount of data, the amount of strip trials that we're bringing in Western Canada, we have 4 or 5 locations, whether that's Carmen in Manitoba or Saskatoon here or Edmonton in Alberta. But then you combine all those trials. I mean, there's probably close to 1,000 strip trials of data that we're bringing in every year. So when you think about what's changing, whether it's weather, whether it's diseases, whether it's insects, we're going to catch some of that at some point in some of those locations. And when we're testing all of our pre-commercial products out there at that level of strip trial testing, we're going to see the trends. We're going to see what's impacting growers, and hopefully we can use that to stay ahead in what we're bringing forward.
And then, April, when we do look at Western Canada, Jeremy talks about all those trials that are happening. What do you see as some of those things that, growers really do need to have in the back of their mind as they're making plans? Because, when we talk about, seed selection may be for next year, but crop rotations are multiple years, out. What are some of the things that growers need to keep in mind for the next 5 to 10 years?
So I think just, as we look at crop rotations and acre shift and where growers are choosing to put their crops in based on profitability, important to think about. I believe they're thinking about things like weed resistance, disease resistance, and what traits and germplasm is out there that may be able to solve some of those problems for them, or at least ease their mind in terms of how they're making those decisions. So those are 2 things that I think they are thinking about and likely will consider to think about in the future. I think the other thing that we're starting to spend a little bit more time about is insect pressure as it relates to kind of the policy environment and what might come down the pipe in the future. And so I think there's some things to consider there. If I were a grower, I'd be looking up and out a little bit and trying to figure out how that might or may affect me.
And I want to put a pin in the policy discussion because I think that is such a critical thing looking down the road. But I want to tap into your experience working with Pioneer reps as well, because, when we talk about, here's what the growers are expecting, here's what's coming down, the R&D pipeline, the bridge is the Pioneer reps. How have you, and having led those teams, how do you prepare Pioneer reps for, what really is, incredibly fast change and innovation in the industry?
So I think the role of the Pioneer rep really is to understand, what that grower needs almost as well or better than the grower himself, and be able to think really specifically about, as it relates to the seed product line they're choosing. Their role is to understand that with deep knowledge, and then be able to bring that knowledge to the table and show that grower, here's where our product may or may not help you, here's where our product can, here's a challenge you might have that we should consider. Their job is to be the expert. Their job is to kind of plan that right product on the right acre and make sure that they're sharing the knowledge that we're giving them with the customer at a level that is impactful to the grower.
Then same question for you, Jeremy, in terms of, when you look at, Pioneer reps, obviously the challenges are different. I mean, it's still herbicide resistant, it's still disease resistance. We're just talking different ones, but how do you prepare Pioneer reps, for ensuring that they are, as you put it, no farms almost better than the growers themselves?
Yeah, whichever side of the country that they're on, we're spending a great deal of time with them in training, getting them into plots, getting them to showcase technologies well before they're to market, so they have a full understanding of what that's going to bring to the marketplace. We count on them to sit at the grower level and know those local needs. So we're testing over a vast area. We're using a lot of data, but they always have some real intricate knowledge of that local market that the grower's dealing with. And so taking that knowledge and then being able to maybe get that to the grower level on terms that are meaningful to them, and really address those challenges that may fit that local area day to day.
Then coming back to the policy discussion, because that is one of those things that, within agriculture, we can come up with some incredible innovations to solve a lot of those challenges. The question that I always have is, are we going to be allowed to, go through with those innovations? You've seen it. It's a both side of the border issue. It's it's a global issue when we talk about some of these technologies. How do you stay ahead of those discussions when, so many of them, maybe aren't based on the science that builds an industry like agriculture?
Yeah, I spent 4 days in Ottawa earlier this month, and just had a lot of those same discussions, and it's difficult. We count on our regulatory teams to be working hand in hand with influencers and policymakers, making sure that they're bringing forward the data that's needed, the right data packages that addresses those questions. So we're spending a lot of time. We're spending a lot of time focusing on that.
Then April, when you think about that, one of the things that I think about on my farm is innovation is awesome. Like, I love having, this product that is, going to be more profitable. The idea of it is great. However, I'm still a farmer and love my comfort. So, you've got those varieties that you say, oh, those did well and I want them forever. How do you bring growers along when, these varieties, these hybrids, how do you bring them along when they are changing so quickly?
Yeah, so I think it's, first of all, when we're bringing a new hybrid to the market, we have to make sure that we're bringing something that improves a product that we already have. So there has to be a gain or an advancement. And secondly, we have to show them. We have to allow them or give them the opportunity to touch and feel and see it, whether it's in the field, whether it's on a tour, whether it's at a meeting. It's our role really to show them what the new advancement is, and then more importantly, explain to them why it's important to them. So it's great to see and touch and feel things, but we also have to kind of put the practical side on, and this is what it means to you, Mr. Farmer or Mr. Pioneer Agency or whatever it is, because ultimately we can throw darts at a dartboard for new products. There's all sorts of innovative products in the marketplace, but how it applies to a specific farm for he or she, that's probably the most important thing, and it's our job to communicate that effectively.
So when we do talk about those new products, let's step back and look at the portfolio that you've got now. There has been a lot of innovation, across the Corteva brand over the last couple of years, and some new ones coming in the next couple of years. What do you highlight as some of those things that growers, really do want to look at, and be ready to look at some of that data?
Yeah, so I think if we look at our three core crops, so corn, canola, soybeans across Canada, we've really just launched 3 brand new traits in each of those spaces. And so that's pretty exciting. It's really exciting to be able to launch Optimum Gly. And so that is our glyphosate trait that we launched in February of 2023. It really gives growers that added flexibility, extended rate, extended application window. And so in canola, that's pretty unique technology, and it's something we've been working on for quite a long time. In our soybean market, we're launching Enlist or E3 beans. We're a little bit ahead of the curve in terms of our launch project in Eastern Canada, and quickly following behind in Western Canada. And in the corn market, we're launching Power Core Enlist 4-seed, and that's pretty new technology. Just recent announcement, so we're very excited to be able to launch that as well. And so it's a big portfolio, and there's lots of new stuff coming.
Yeah. With those three products, Jeremy, in terms of, what the potential is, like, there obviously is, when we talk about these herbicide, traits, the move to expand the availability for that. What's the driving force between, for making sure that these new products are coming out?
What's the driving force?
The driving force, like you've got Optimum, you've Gly, you've got Enlist, you've got a new one that is even new to me, and I'm trying to keep up on all the innovations in the corn market. What drives that speed?
Well, I think it's just the challenges that growers are going through, whether it's weed pressure, insect pressure. I think about things like yield stability, change in the environment, weather pressures, all that combined. This is our newest technology. It's our newest germplasm. I mean, breeding progress compounds over time. This is our newest stuff with the latest traits that we have available. Most of these we've been working on for a decade. We're excited to finally get them to market.
Well, and that always does, amaze me in terms of you talk about the runway that it takes to bring these products. What is 10 years? What do you think? Like, if you look ahead, 10 years down the road now, what do you think you have to be ahead of then?
Well, yeah, to me, a couple things come to mind. I use words like resilience, yield stability. When I think about the pressures the grower is under from weather impacts annually, every year is so different, and it seems like the challenges aren't getting less. So if we can bring more stability, if we can bring more resilience to those crops in whatever weather extremes may come at them, that to me is the progress that we got to keep bringing forward to help growers fight through this.
In April, when I look at, you talk about those three main crops, canola, corn, soybeans, my farming career has not been that long, but the gains that we've already seen in the last decade, really astound me in terms of, what has happened. Can we keep doing that?
I feel like that's a trick question. But do I think that there's more gains and more advancements? Yes, I do. I think when I look at our germplasm and our pipeline on all crops and maybe even some new expanding opportunities, I think there's still room to grow and there's room to add value. And we had the opportunity to talk to a few growers yesterday, and I think their feedback was anything we can do to innovate, to make a decision easy for them, and add value to what they put in the ground, really sets us apart from our competition. And so, when we look at our whole pipeline, that's what we're aspiring to do, and I don't think we're done yet.
So then just kind of, to wrap up, a couple of final questions for both of you. And I'm going to put you on the spot, Jeremy, so April has time to think about it. But because the question is for both of you in terms of, like, what drives you? You're leading this team now. What drives you, to make this company more successful than it's been so far?
Well, for me, it's always the people. I mean, they leave the biggest impression on you. Ag's really similar wherever you go. The amount of energy, excitement, passion for agriculture that I see from growers, I see from our field teams, I see from Pioneer reps. That level of energy is exciting. And then when we can bring new solutions and new things to the market on an annual basis to help solve some of those challenges, and if just making progress every year and bringing forward solutions that growers can use, that's what drives me, and as well as the people.
April, what drives you?
So it wouldn't be much different, truthfully. When I look in the field at how passionate our people are and how proud they are of what we've accomplished so far, knowing what we have kind of behind the curtain, for lack of better explanation, I'm pretty excited to be able to kind of move that needle forward and give them the space and the fortitude to be really successful. And I think if we look back 5 years from now and we say, okay, we launched 3 brand new traits and likely some more in the future, and just show the progress to the grower, the profitability, the flexibility that we offer them, and then just the success of our people, to me, I think that will be the, you did good, or we were successful as a company.
Yeah, well, that's great. Well, Jeremy, April, thanks very much for joining the podcast.
Thanks, Andrew.
And thank you for listening to the Pioneer Made to Grow podcast. On behalf of myself and the entire team working behind the scenes, we appreciate having you. And of course, if you've missed any previous episodes, you can find or subscribe to the podcast on your favorite app, including Apple Podcast, Google Podcast, Spotify, or dozens of others. If you ever have any comments, you can find me on social at Fresh Air Farmer, the Pioneer team's on Twitter at Pioneer Seeds CA. And don't forget, there's always more information and advice from your local Pioneer rep or pioneer.com/Canada.